3.5 million Indians.
कठिन समय यूएई में रहने वाले भारतीय समुदाय की चिंता करते और उनकी देखभाल की जाती। जिस प्रकार से आपने उनको अपने परिवार के सदस्यों को संभाला है, मैं यूएई सरकार का, आपका, रॉयल फैमिली का हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
$200 billion in trade on the table.
Prime Minister Modi and President Mohammed bin Zayed discussed a wide range of issues, from nuclear reactors to LNG to a $200 billion trade target.
Iranian drones slamming into the UAE soil.
UAE air defences are currently dealing with incoming missiles and drone threats from Iran.
If Mumbai is the heart of India's economy, the UAE is no longer just a foreign country. It is India's economic lifeline, and right now it is under attack. So I have to ask the question no one will. Does India need a permanent military base in the UAE? In this video, we decode three things. Number one, why the UAE is literally an extension of India and not just a trading partner. Point number two, why Saudi Arabia and the UAE are quietly at war with each other and what that means for India. Point number three, why India's 1,000-year-old legacy of projecting power beyond its borders must be revived now. Hello everybody and welcome to Borders and Beyond. Today's geopolitical subject is India and the UAE. The UAE is home to India's largest diaspora in the world. Over 3.5 million Indian nationals are working there and they're not there on holiday or vacations. These are doctors, engineers, construction workers and finance professionals who are literally building a modern Gulf state with their own hands.
That is the character of His Highness and our country's leadership. He addressed the residents of this country as our extended family. For Indians in the UAE, that phrase is not a metaphor.
Now add to that the money flowing back. In 2025, India received a record $135 billion in remittances globally. Nearly 20% of that came from the UAE alone, but it does not stop at remittances alone. We just secured a long-term LNG deal for 0.5 million tons of liquefied natural gas. The Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserves have signed a collaboration with ADNOC, Abu Dhabi's national oil company. Energy security directly anchored in the UAE. The bilateral trade target $200 billion by 2032.
According to Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, the talks culminated in an ambitious roadmap to double bilateral trade from the current $100 billion to $200 billion by 2032.
If you think about that for a second, if the UAE economy sneezes, the Indian middle class catches a cold instantly. Now here's a question that rarely gets asked. PM Modi has visited UAE 8 times since 2015. 8 visits. No other country in the Gulf comes close to that frequency. When a prime minister keeps returning to the same place that many times, he is not just doing diplomacy. He's telling you exactly where India's strategic interests lie. Now, before we get to the military dimension, we need to understand something fundamental about Gulf, because most people treat it as one of the bloc. It is not. Saudi Arabia and UAE are two different countries with two very different visions for the future. Saudi Arabia is still at its core an oil economy, deeply conservative, religiously defined. Its foreign policy has historically been about maintaining religious influence and protecting its own monarchy. The UAE and Dubai specifically took a completely different path. Open lifestyle, global businesses hub, Formula One, luxury tourism and international finance hub. Dubai did not wait for oil money to define it, and the numbers prove this story. And as of first half of 2025, the UAE's oil economy accounts for nearly 77.5% of its total real GDP. Its non-oil foreign trade has crossed a historic $1 trillion, nearly 3.8 trillion dirhams. And this is not a petro state. This is a genuine 21st century diversified economy. Saudi Arabia has Vision 2030 and it is trying to catch up what the UAE has already built over 3 to 4 decades. This is not a small difference. It is a civilizational divergence and it explains why the two countries are now pulling in a completely opposite directions when it comes to security partnerships. Now here is where it gets really interesting, and this story is barely covered in any Indian media. Saudi Arabia and the UAE joined hands in 2015 to fight the Houthis in Yemen. That was the original plan. That was the coalition. But what happened inside that coalition over the next decade is one of the most significant geopolitical fractures in the Gulf. Saudi Arabia's goal was simple: keep Yemen unified under a government it could control, stable neighbor, no Houthi threat on its southern border. The UAE had a completely different calculation. Abu Dhabi quietly funded and armed a group called the Southern Transitional Council, the STC, which wanted to break Yemen apart and create an independent south. But why? Because the UAE's interests are maritime, ports, trade routes, coastline control, and by December 2025, the STC, backed by UAE money and weapons, had seized nearly half of Yemen's territory in a rapid offense. They raised the flag at the Saudi border. Riyadh was furious. Saudi airstrikes hit STC position. The STC was ultimately dissolved.
Saudi Arabia has carried out airstrikes on the Yemeni port city of Mukalla, citing the arrival of a weapons shipment allegedly destined for a separatist force backed by the United Arab Emirates, a move that underscores growing friction within the Gulf-led coalition involved in Yemen's long-running conflict.
But here is the strategic takeaway. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are no longer allies in a meaningful sense. They are rivals, politely careful, but unmistakably competing for the influence across the entire Gulf region. And this is exactly the opening that India needs to understand. And on May 4th this year, the equation shifted, and it shifted really fast. Iranian drones hit Fujairah.
3 Indian nationals were injured on May 4th after a fire broke out in the Fujairah Petroleum Industries Zone in the United Arab Emirates. Authorities said that the fire was caused by a drone strike from Iran.
3 Indians rushed to the hospital with shrapnel wounds as storage tanks erupted in flames. And in Abu Dhabi, falling debris over the Swina Street killed over 1 Indian national. In Dubai, drone strikes on the Terminal 3 of the airport and the Fairmont Jumeirah left Indian transit workers and tourists injured. In Bahrain, strikes on residential towers near the US 5th Fleet headquarters plunged Indian families into genuine terror. This is no longer a regional conflict. This is a direct threat to Indian lives, Indian money, and India's energy supply chain. Now look at the diplomatic timeline, because the sequence matters enormously. Just weeks before, our External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar and NSA Ajit Doval were in Abu Dhabi.
April 26th, Ajit Doval meets the UAE President. Focus: energy security. Earlier that same month, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also meets the UAE leadership. Again, same theme: energy, regional stability, supply chains. 2 high-level visits within weeks, both personally involving the UAE President.
And on May 7th, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri convened emergency talks. And then on May 15th, our Prime Minister landed in Abu Dhabi, where UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed personally received him at the airport. formation of UAE military aircraft escorted the Prime Minister's plane into the UAE airspace. This is not a routine welcome. This is a signal. During the visit, both leaders signed a framework agreement on strategic defense partnership. They signed oil and LNG supply deals. They discussed maritime stability, energy flows, and the evolving situations in the West Asia. Our Prime Minister said himself, the UAE feels like a second home. And when a Prime Minister says that after 8 visits and signs a defense pact in the middle of an active regional conflict, you're watching a policy become a doctrine. So where does this leave the traditional Gulf security architecture? Saudi Arabia has doubled down on its aging relationship with Pakistan, leaning on the idea of so-called fictitious nuclear umbrella, a 20th century strategy against a 21st century threat. Pakistani troops have historically served in Saudi Arabia. The Riyadh-Islamabad axis is extremely well documented. The UAE has made a completely different choice. They invited our army chief. They hosted our presidential guard. They signed agreements to acquire BrahMos and Akash missile system specifically to counter the drone threat. They are not buying Pakistani capabilities. They are buying high-tech Indian technology. And the logic is straightforward. The UAE wants a tech-capable, economically powerful, strategically reliable partner, not a nuclear hedging country dependent on Gulf remittances for economic survival. And this is a deliberate and calculated reorientation. And India needs to respond with the same deliberateness. And there are people who claim India has never had out-of-boundary strategic ambition. This is simply not accurate. And over 1,000 years ago, the Chola Empire, Rajendra, projected naval power more than 2,000 kilometers, securing trade routes through Indonesia and Straits of Malacca with wooden ships.
इनकी बदौलत ही चोलाज का कंट्रोल नॉर्थ में कृष्णा गोदावरी बेसिन से लेकर साउथ में श्रीलंका और मालदीव्स और वेस्ट में लक्षद्वीप से लेकर ईस्ट में मलया पेनिनसुला तक फैल गया था।
And in the 19th century, General Zorawar Singh, the Napoleon of India, conquered Ladakh and drove deep into Tibet.
इस व्यक्ति ने अभी तिब्बत की दुर्गम पहाड़ियों को जीतकर उसे उत्तर भारत के एक विशाल साम्राज्य का हिस्सा बना डाला था। ये कहानी है जनरल जोरावर सिंह कहलोरिया की, वो व्यक्ति जिसे पूर्व का नेपोलियन नाम दिया गया, वो व्यक्ति जिसने भारत की सीमाओं का चीन की सरहदों तक विस्तार करने का लक्ष्य चुना और इसमें वो लगभग सफल भी हो गया था।
And in the modern era, India has always been the Gulf's quite security backbone. In the 1960s, Saudi Arabia asked the Indian Air Force to train its pilots. In 70s, Oman sought Indian military logistics during the Doha rebellion and in return granted the Indian Navy access to Duqm Port. And in the 80s, Iraq relied on Indian expertise for strategic air bases. These are not isolated favors. This is a pattern, a 1,000-year-old pattern of India as a natural security anchor of Indian Ocean and the Gulf. So the question is, why are we still treating this like it is someone else's responsibility? And the movement calls for a whole of nation approach. We have 8 visits from our Prime Minister who understand what is at stake. We have a defense pact freshly signed. We have joint exercises on UAE soil. We have 3.5 million Indians whose safety depends on our willingness to act. And global power is not free. It demands sustained military investment. It demands the willingness to absorb calculated risk, and it demands the acceptance that protecting our interests thousands of miles from our borders is not aggression. It is called statecraft, and the contours of the new world order are taking shape as we speak right now in Abu Dhabi, in Fujairah, and in Strait of Hormuz. The UAE has already chosen India. The only question is whether India will choose ourselves. It is time to step forward. It is time to lead. Jai Hind.